Mom left me a note before she died. What you're looking for is behind her favorite volume. Now the whole family is hunting the inheritance no one knew existed. I hadn't set foot in that town for 12 years. Not since the night I drove away, my mother watching silently from the porch, wrapped in her cardigan like it was armor against what neither of us had the courage to say. Now she was dead, and I was back. Not for forgiveness, not for peace, but because of a note. I found it tucked inside the folds of her prayer book, the one she kept hidden behind cans of soup in the pantry, as if salvation were something that could be preserved in broth. It was written in her sharp, looping hand. Just one line. What you're looking for is behind her favorite volume. No explanation, no signature, just that. But I knew what it meant. I knew her was Gran, my mother's mother, and the volume could only be one thing. Tolstoy, Anna Karenina. The leather-bound edition that sat untouched in the locked glass case of the Ashford Public Library. Gran had loved that book almost as much as she loved reminding us she once turned down a proposal from a man who went on to become a state senator. She'd chosen romance over security and lived the rest of her life bitterly poor but poetically defiant. Everyone else in the family assumed Mom had died penniless. After the funeral, my cousins raided her kitchen like vultures in pearls. My Uncle Gerald took her silverware. My sister Michelle wept while pocketing the sapphire ring she swore was only costume jewelry. No one even noticed I wasn't staying in the house. I booked a room above the diner on Main Street. That night, I stared at the note for hours. I'd been disinherited years ago, unofficially, after I came out, after the argument, after I left. But that note, it didn't feel like guilt. It felt like a breadcrumb. So the next morning, before the town even stirred, I walked to the library. It hadn't changed. Still smelled like old paper and lemon wax. Still had the same orange carpet with the repeating fern pattern. Mrs. Claiborne was still there too, now in her 80s and fiercely protective of the heritage section. She didn't recognize me at first. I'd grown out my beard, wore black instead of corduroy. But when I said my last name, her eyes widened behind her glasses. "You're Martha's boy," she said. I nodded. She left me a note. I didn't say more. She studied me for a long moment, then pulled a ring of keys from her sweater pocket. No questions, no sermon, just a quiet gesture that told me she knew this town had never been kind to me, and maybe, just maybe, she was trying to make up for it. The cabinet creaked open like it hadn't been touched in years. There it was, Gran's Anna Karenina, gold-gilded pages, red ribbon bookmark. My hands shook as I opened it. I expected a letter, a key, some hidden cash folded between chapters. What I found instead was a photograph. Old, faded, for people in front of a white house. My mother, barely 17, her hair in a long braid. Gran, standing proud. A man I didn't recognize. And a baby. Not me. Too small. The wrong era. And tucked behind the photo, another note. He lives. And he has a right to know. That's when I realized the inheritance wasn't money. It was truth. And I wasn't the only one looking for it. Because when I left the library, someone had already been watching me. And they weren't family. Not anymore. "You were never supposed to see that photo," my aunt hissed. And suddenly I realized the family had been hiding more than just money. I was halfway down the library steps when I saw the car. Midnight blue Buick. Tinted windows. Out of place in a town where most folks still drove rust-bitten trucks or clung to their Toyotas like wartime rations. The driver wasn't reading, wasn't texting. Just sitting. Watching. I walked past like I didn't notice, but every step felt heavier. The photo in my pocket burned like it was radioactive. I didn't look back until I turned the corner. The Buick was gone. Back at the diner, I spread the photo on the desk beneath the cheap motel lamp. My mother, 17, smiling, the kind of smile I hadn't seen since I was a child. She looked like hope, like escape. The man next to her, tall, black hair, sleeves rolled, eyes almost daring the world to stop him. He wasn't my father. I was sure of that. And the baby? The one nestled in my mother's arms? He had a dimple in his chin. Same as mine. Same as Gran's. The note tucked behind the photo kept echoing in my skull. He lives. And he has a right to know. Who was he? The baby? The man? Or someone else entirely? I called my sister. Michelle answered on the second ring, her voice tight and annoyed. "You're not still in town, are you? Nice to hear from you too," I said. "Funeral wasn't enough family time for you?" She sighed. "Don't do this, Liam. Just say what you want." I found something in Mom's old book, I said slowly. A photo. She's young in it. With a man I don't recognize. And a baby that. You're digging, she snapped. You always do this. Stirring ghosts. You don't want to know who the baby is? There was a pause. Then, you were never supposed to see that photo. My spine straightened. What? She left that locked up for a reason, Michelle said. Her voice had gone cold, clipped, controlled. If she wanted you to have it, she would have given it to you when she was alive. She did give it to me. That's not what I mean. I could hear something in the background. A door closing. Wind. Where are you? I asked. But she didn't answer. The line went dead. An hour later, someone slipped a note under my motel room door. No sound. No knock. Just the quiet hiss of paper across old carpet. My stomach twisted as I unfolded it. Blocky handwriting. No signature. Stop looking. You're not the only one who can read a book. I didn't sleep that night. At sunrise, I drove back to the old family house, the one my Uncle Gerald had claimed before the will was even read. The siding was peeling, porch sagging. Still the same chipped rocking chair where my mother used to sit, humming hymns and rubbing her wrist when she was anxious. Gerald answered the door with a beer in his hand and surprise in his eyes. Well, the prodigal decides to show. I need to see Grans' old trunk. He snorted. You think I kept that dusty crap? I think you kept everything you thought could be sold. His smirk faded. It's in the attic. Locked. What's it to you? She left something behind, I said. Something she wanted me to find. Gerald looked me up and down. His lip curled like he'd tasted something sour. She left you nothing, Liam. You don't get to rewrite that. I stepped forward. You don't know everything she did. He laughed bitterly. You think she was a saint? Your mother lied more than she prayed. And Gran, don't get me started. Then let me see the trunk. Let me see for myself. He hesitated. Then, as if calculating the value of my silence, he stepped aside. The attic was as I remembered it. Dust-heavy air, slants of light through broken shingles, the creak of old boards like the floor remembering secrets. The trunk was there. Iron lock. Leather corners cracked and brittle. And when I opened it, something shifted. Not just inside the trunk. Inside me. Because lying right on top was another copy of the photo. But this one had something written on the back. Elias, your brother. 1985. My hand trembled. My breath caught. I had a brother. A real one. One no one ever told me about. And he was out there. Living a life that wasn't supposed to be hidden. A creak behind me. I turned too slow. A shadow moved in the doorway. And a voice I hadn't heard in a decade said softly, You shouldn't have come back, Liam. You shouldn't have come back, Liam, my cousin whispered, then locked the attic door behind me. It was Grace, my cousin, 3 years younger, born with a voice like velvet and a gift for making knives out of smiles. The last time I saw her, she was 21, dancing barefoot in the backyard with a cigarette in one hand and my mother's pearls around her neck. Now, she stood in the attic doorway, eyes sharp and unforgiving. She shut the door behind her with a slow click. No lock, just the sound. But it might as well have been a cell slamming shut. You were always too curious for your own good, she said, her boots crunching lightly on the warped floorboards as she stepped closer. That's why they cut you off. I held the photo tight in my hand. Why didn't anyone tell me I had a brother? Grace tilted her head. Because you don't. I stared at her. It says his name. Elias. 1985. That's the year Mom vanished for 2 months. Everyone said she was visiting a friend. She was, Grace said. Just not the kind of friend you think. Stop talking in riddles. She looked down, brushing a cobweb off the side of the trunk. Her voice softened. Liam, you were adopted. The world tilted. What? She looked up. Your mother couldn't have children. Everyone thought it was Richard, your dad, but it was her. They adopted you when you were just a baby and raised you like their own. And they did love you. But then she got pregnant. I couldn't breathe. She had Elias in secret, she said. Didn't tell anyone, not even Gran. Gave him up immediately. She was terrified of what your father would say, of what it meant, of how it might unravel the perfect family she'd finally built. I felt like the floor had cracked open beneath me. My legs were weak. So she abandoned him and lied. And what? Just carried on like nothing happened. She had to, Grace said. Your mom was drowning, Liam. Elias was born in silence and shame. I only found out because I overheard Gran screaming at her once, years later. She swore me to secrecy. Does he even know? Grace hesitated. No, she said. Not by name. But I think he's looking. He posted on a forum last year. A message about being born in Ashford, 1985, adopted anonymously. I recognized the phrasing. I think he's close. I sat down dizzy. 2 mothers. 1 child discarded. Another never told. How long have you known? Since I was 15, Grace said. I wanted to tell you. I swear I did. But Gran, she said we had to protect the family. That no good ever came from digging up buried things. I looked at her. But Mom left the note. Grace nodded. That's why I came back. I think she wanted to set things right before she died. I think she knew time was up. Suddenly, the Buick made sense. The note under the door. The silence from Michelle. They weren't just guarding a secret. They were trying to kill it before it spread. I looked down at the photo again. A brother. Out there. Living a life he thought began with strangers. And here I was, his ghost, walking through the halls of a story he never knew he belonged to. We have to find him, I said. Grace was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out a folded page, printed from a forum. A post under the name Ashford Echo. Short, desperate, dated 9 months ago. Born August 1985. Ashford Hospital. No birth certificate. Searching for biological family. Just one question. Why was I hidden? Grace whispered. I think his name now is Elijah. And then I knew that everything I believed about my family was a story written in someone else's ink. You want to find Elijah? My father rasped from his hospital bed. Then you'd better be ready to destroy what's left of this family. Grace and I didn't speak on the drive to the hospital. The sky over Ashford had turned a bruised purple, clouds low and impatient, like they knew the storm inside me was only warming up. I hadn't seen my father in 5 years, not since the day he told me I was a distraction to my mother's grief. He'd had a stroke last winter. He lived now in the long-term care wing of St. Mercy's, his memory a flickering light bulb. Still, something in me needed to look him in the eye. I needed to know if he knew about Elias. About Elijah. When we entered his room, he was propped up in bed, eyes glazed over, watching a muted baseball game. The nurse, a woman with warm hands and tired eyes, touched my shoulder gently and said, He remembers flashes. Some names. Try to speak slowly. Grace stayed behind me. Silent. Dad, I said, sitting beside him. He turned, blinking. For a moment, just a moment, his eyes sharpened. Liam. Yes. His throat bobbed. He looked at me like I'd been gone 10 minutes, not 10 years. Your mother, he started, then stopped. She's gone, isn't she? I nodded. She left me something. His fingers twitched. A letter. A photo. His hand trembled as he reached out. I placed it in his palm. The picture of my mother, young and radiant, with the man I didn't know and the baby that wasn't me. He stared at it for a long time. Then he whispered, It was never supposed to come out. My chest tightened. You knew? He looked up, shame and pain etched deep in the lines of his face. I was angry. She didn't tell me until months after it happened. Said she panicked. That it was over. That the child had been placed. But I saw how it haunted her. Why didn't you tell me? Because we couldn't lose you too. I swallowed hard. You didn't think I had a right to know I had a brother? We buried that truth so deep, he said, his voice gravel. Because if it surfaced, your mother would have unraveled, and the family would have gone with her. He looked at me then, truly looked. And now you want to dig it up? You want to find Elijah? I nodded. He leaned back into the pillows, his eyes wet. Then you'd better be ready to destroy what's left of this family. Outside his room, Grace sat in the hallway, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I approached. There's more, she said quietly. I didn't tell you everything. I froze. She turned the screen toward me. It was an old article, archived from a local paper. Obituary section. Daniel Foster, 34, passed unexpectedly in a car accident, survived by his wife, newborn son, and a sister, Martha Carter. My mother. The man in the photo. My knees gave way. I sank into the bench beside her. He wasn't just a stranger, I whispered. He was her brother-in-law. Grace nodded. She had an affair with her sister's husband. Elijah is both your brother and your cousin. The air around me grew thinner, tighter, a vice clamping around my ribs. All these years, I said, barely breathing. And she carried that. Lived with that. Grace looked at me, her voice trembling. And now it's yours. I stood. I needed air. Space. A different version of reality. But just as we stepped outside, My phone buzzed. Unknown number. One new text. I think you're looking for me. My name is Elijah. I'm your brother, he said. But I don't know if I want to be part of this family. I stared at the screen for so long I forgot how to blink. I think you're looking for me. My name is Elijah. Below that, a number, a link to a private forum, and a message timestamped just minutes ago. I saw your post. And the photo. My adoptive mother passed away last year. I've been searching ever since. I don't want money. I just want answers. My fingers hovered over the keypad. Then slowly, I typed. Can we meet? His reply came instantly. I'm in Ashford. Been here for 3 days. I felt the air leave my lungs. He was already here. Watching. Waiting. Just like I had been. We agreed to meet that evening. Neutral ground. The old train station just outside of town, abandoned for years, a skeleton of what once connected Ashford to the rest of the state. A place that knew something about being forgotten. I told Grace I'd go alone. She didn't fight me. She just said, be kind. He's walking into fire. When I pulled up, the sun was melting behind the trees, casting the tracks in a golden bruise. Elijah stood near the platform edge, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes scanning the horizon like he expected someone else to show. And God, he looked like her. The same sharp jawline. The same storm gray eyes. My mother's mouth. He turned when he heard my footsteps. Neither of us said a word for a long time. Finally, he exhaled. I thought I was crazy, he said, seeing the resemblance in the mirror, wondering why I never fit. I grew up in a good home, loving parents, but something always felt off. I'm sorry, I said, for all of it. He nodded slowly. She gave me away? She was young. It was complicated. Painful. She abandoned me, he said flatly. Let's not dress it up. I swallowed. She was afraid. He turned to look at the sky, his voice low. I was raised by people who told me I was a miracle. I had a backyard, a dog named Samson, a dad who coached my soccer games. I had no reason to question anything. Until my mother got sick. She left me a letter, said I was adopted. No details. No records. Just a name, Martha Carter. I blinked. She told you her name? He nodded. She said, if you need to know why, find Martha Carter. I felt like sobbing. She died thinking it was enough, he said. But it wasn't. I understand. Do you? He asked, turning to face me. Because you got to stay. You got a mother. A family. A history. I looked away. They didn't exactly make me feel like I belonged either. He nodded, his jaw tight. Because you're gay? I froze. How did you? I read the old threads. Saw the town articles. Small towns talk, even online. I chuckled bitterly. Yeah, they talk. He took a breath. So what now? He asked. You found me. I found you. Does that make us, what? Brothers? Strangers with matching DNA? I don't know, I said. I didn't come looking for closure. I came because I couldn't stand the idea of you out there, alone, without answers. I came because I think you deserve the truth. He stared at the rusted tracks for a while, then said, without looking at me, I'm your brother, but I don't know if I want to be part of this family. I get that. He turned to face me again. But maybe, he said, we can build something different. Just us. And in that moment, I saw it, not forgiveness, not absolution, but possibility. The kind that grows from wreckage. The kind that needs no permission. If you bring him into this house, my sister said, you're dead to me. The silence between me and Elijah as we left the train station wasn't awkward. It was thick with unsaid things. With old ghosts. With the question neither of us had yet dared voice out loud. Now what? He followed me back to the diner where I was still renting a room. We didn't speak much, just exchanged weary glances that said more than words could. I offered him the second bed by the window. He nodded, set his duffel bag down, and stared out toward Main Street like he was trying to make sense of the town that had tried to erase him. That night, he slept in his clothes. I didn't sleep at all. By morning, I knew what we had to do. We had to go to the house. Not for answers. Not for permission. But for confrontation. The last of the old Carters were still there, Michelle, my sister, and Uncle Gerald. They'd taken over the property like squatters in a kingdom of shame. Michelle had always been the family's gatekeeper, protector of appearances, soldier of silence. If Mom had a secret, Michelle made sure it stayed a secret, not out of love, but preservation. We arrived mid-morning. The porch creaked under our weight. Elijah stood just behind me, hands in his pockets, jaw clenched. Michelle answered the door. She looked from me to him. Her eyes narrowed. "Who's this?" she asked, voice already sharp. I stared at her. "His name is Elijah." Her lips parted slightly. "You didn't." "I did." She glanced over her shoulder, then back at me. "You brought him here?" "He's our blood," I said. "He deserves the truth." Michelle stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind her like she was sealing a tomb. Her face twisted with a rage so cold it felt surgical. "If you bring him into this house," she said slowly, "you're dead to me." I blinked. She had said a lot of cruel things in our lives, but never like this. Never with this particular precision. Not as a threat, as a sentence. "Michelle, do you know what this will do to us?" she hissed. "Do you have any idea what you're unraveling?" Elijah stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "I'm not here to take anything. I don't want money. I don't want property. I just want to know where I came from." She looked him up and down like he was a roach that had crawled in through a crack in the foundation. "You came from a mistake," she said, "and we've spent our whole lives cleaning it up." My hands clenched. "You don't get to say that. You don't get to drag a ghost into our lives and pretend he's family." "He is family," I said. Michelle's jaw trembled. "You think this is noble? You think Mom wanted this?" "She made her choice. She gave him up. She stayed with us. You think you're doing something brave, Liam, but you're just ripping open a grave she begged us never to touch." She left me a note. "Oh, please," she snapped. "You, the cast-off son, think one cryptic line gives you a right to rewrite our history?" "I'm not rewriting anything," I said, my voice rising. "I'm finishing what she started." She stared at me for a long, awful moment, then turned to Elijah. "You want the truth? Here it is," she said. "Your father was our uncle. Our aunt found out. She was going to destroy Mom. So Mom disappeared for 2 months. Had you. Give you away. Then came back like nothing happened. She carried that guilt like a stone in her stomach for the rest of her life. And now you've dug it up, just in time for the rest of us to choke on it." Elijah blinked. "You think I asked for this?" Michelle pointed at me. "He brought you. He's the reason this is happening." "Michelle," I said, stepping between them, "stop blaming him for what Mom did." "You don't understand," she said, voice trembling now. "Everything I've held together, this family, this house, everything we've survived, it will burn the second this gets out. Do you think people will let this go? That our name means nothing." "It already means nothing," I said. "We just never said it out loud." She slapped me. Hard. Not a tantrum slap. Not a drunken impulse. It was the slap of someone trying to hold history in place with their bare hands. And then she went inside, closed the door, and locked it. Not just physically. Spiritually. Permanently. Elijah and I stood in the silence that followed, the cicadas screaming like the earth itself wanted to drown out the moment. He turned to me. That, he said softly, felt like a funeral. I nodded. It was. Later, we drove back into town, parked outside the library. Grace was waiting on the steps. She stood when she saw us. Looked at Elijah. Looked at me. Then she held out a manila envelope. "I made copies," she said. "Of everything. The photo. The note. The birth records I could find." Elijah took the envelope carefully. "Thank you," he said. She looked at him for a moment. "I'm sorry. For what they did to you." He nodded. Then she looked at me. "You broke the silence. It needed breaking. You know what that means, don't you?" "I do. You'll never be welcome again." "I've never been welcome," I said. "Now I'm just done pretending." Grace smiled, not warm, but respectful, a soldier nodding to another. Then she turned and walked away. That night, Elijah and I sat at the edge of Ashford Lake, where the stars still reflected like they hadn't heard the rumors. "I'm going to leave tomorrow," he said. I nodded. "I figured. But before I go, there's something I want you to see." He reached into his coat, pulled out a faded envelope. Handwritten. Fragile. It was from our mother. And it had never been opened. "You were my miracle and my mistake," her letter began, and by the time Elijah finished reading, none of us were the same. He held the envelope like it was glass, like it might cut him if he didn't move gently. We sat in silence on the rocks by the lake, the water whispering beneath us, the night air thick with the smell of pine and storm-soaked soil. Elijah hadn't said a word since pulling the letter from his coat. "I found it tucked inside a book at my adoptive mom's house," he finally said. "She said she'd promised to give it to me if I ever asked about where I came from." He looked at me. "I didn't ask until after she died." I nodded, not trusting my voice. He turned the letter over once more, broke the seal with shaking fingers, and began to read aloud. "Elijah, if this finds you, it means I never found the courage to say any of this face to face. You were my miracle and my mistake. The moment I saw you, I knew I was both saved and condemned. I held you for 3 hours. Just 3. Then I let go because I was too much a coward to do anything else. You had your father's eyes, and my sister's silence. And I knew, with a certainty I'd never felt before, that if I kept you, I would lose everything. My family, my marriage, my place. I told myself you'd be better off. That the shame would bury me, but not you. That one day you'd have a life free of all this noise. That maybe you'd be loved without the weight of my decisions crushing you. But I've watched every year from a distance. I donated under fake names. I sent letters I never mailed. I followed your adoption agency reports until they stopped coming. And I died a little every time I saw your name and couldn't say it aloud. I am not asking for forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I am not asking for love. I forfeited that long ago. But I am asking that if you read this, you know that I never stopped thinking of you. Not once. Not in 34 years. You are my blood. You are my grief. You are the son I left behind but never let go of. And if you ever meet your brother Liam, tell him I am proud of the man he's become. Tell him I'm sorry for making him carry so much alone. And tell him I left the door unlocked, even when he thought it was shut. Martha. The lake went completely still. Elijah folded the letter back into its envelope with reverence, as if he were closing a tomb. I hated her, he whispered. For so long. For leaving me. For pretending I never existed. He turned to me, and his eyes were glassy, but not broken. But this is the first time I felt like maybe. I wasn't invisible. I looked at him, my voice finally steady. She wanted you to know. She just didn't know how. He nodded. Then after a long moment, she mentioned you. Said she was proud. I didn't know that until now, I said, my voice tight. We sat in silence, not because we had nothing left to say, but because for the first time, the silence wasn't hollow. It was full. With memory. With sorrow. With truth. I think I'll come back, Elijah said. Not now. But someday. You'll be welcome. He gave a small, knowing smile. Not by all of them. No, I said. But by the right ones. As the moon rose over Ashford Lake, Elijah stood, stretched, and looked out at the water one last time. Then he turned to me and said something I hadn't heard in years, not from family, not from anyone. Thank you, Liam, for not leaving me behind. You're not the black sheep, Grace said. You're the one who finally told the truth. A week after Elijah left Ashford, I stood in the church I swore I'd never return to. It smelled the same. Old wood. Dust. A faint trace of lilies. The pews were mostly empty, just a scattering of familiar faces, all too polite to ask why I was back. I wasn't there for Sunday service. I was there to bury the silence. I had called it a memorial. Not for Mom, that had already happened, but for what had been lost, the truth, the time, the brother, the years spent pretending we were whole when we were cracked to the core. I stood at the front, no microphone, just my voice, and said everything they'd spent their lives avoiding. I'm not here to shame anyone, I began. But I am here to make sure the truth doesn't rot underground. I told them about Elijah. I told them what our mother did, and what she didn't. I read her letter aloud. Some gasped. Some cried. A few walked out. But no one stopped me. Afterward, I walked down the steps and found Grace waiting by the exit. You sure know how to eulogize a family, she said, smirking softly. It's about time someone did. She slipped a folded paper into my coat pocket. I'm moving to Chicago next month. Going to work with a foundation for at-risk youth. Thought it was time I did something that matters. I raised an eyebrow. This related to? She nodded. All of it. Then she looked at me and said something I'll never forget. You're not the black sheep, Liam. You're the one who finally told the truth. I didn't go back to the diner that night. Instead, I drove to the edge of town, where Gran's old garden used to be, now just weeds and broken trellises. I stood there in the wind and thought about the lie that built our family, and the truth that finally tore it open. A text buzzed on my phone. From Elijah. Got the job. Portland Hospital. Pediatrics wing. Turns out helping lost kids runs in the blood. You ever come this way? Doors open. I smiled. Then another message, seconds later. Tell the town I exist. I replied. Already did. It's been a year. Michelle doesn't speak to me. Uncle Gerald sold the house. The Carter name no longer opens doors in Ashford, but it no longer closes them either. And me? I stayed for a while. Told more stories that had gone quiet. Started a community project to archive family histories. Honest ones. Not the ones we tell to feel better. The ones we bury so no one sees the cracks. Sometimes the truth hurts. But silence kills. And I won't be a part of that anymore. Because I've learned something no one else in this family ever dared admit. Some legacies aren't meant to be protected. They're meant to be rewritten. And we did. Together. One truth at a time.